Hi, it's me, Connie from The Painted Photographer. I have a thrift haul to show you, and I'm going to thrift 5 items from my thrift haul and show you how I do it. So first of all, I'm going to show you everything that I got. I got this GMI dishwasher safe metal bowl with roses on it. They're on both sides. This bowl would be really pretty sitting in your kitchen, and you can even use it. A candlestick, metal, copper, brass. I think brass. I'm gonna say brass. This is project number 1. These are 2 black candlestick holders that we're going to make farmhouse. We have a pitcher that has a really pretty flower design on. This is an American Lingos Trumpf Blue Daisy Creamer. And that will be listed on my website at thepaintedphotographer.com. We have a mother of pearl bowl dish. Now, I like to have white dishes on my counter. And this one, I can see taking a stick of butter and cutting it in half and having my butter in here. Who leaves their butter on the counter? Do you? Let me know in the comments, because I certainly do. I like soft butter. I don't like hard butter, so it doesn't go in the fridge. Here's another picture. This is white and has a blue china pattern on it. This is called the Chelsea pattern, and it's Ocelia Semi-Porcelain, Malure Tailored and Company, and they're blue and white flowers and vines. It is very pretty. I think this one might be staying with me. You'll have to check the website and see if I decided to part with it. Project number 2, a couple of birdhouses. Let's flip them around. Project number 2 is a couple of birdhouses. We're gonna modernize these and make these look cute again. They are cute. I could see putting them in your house. I can see putting them outside, but right now they need a facelift, and I'm gonna show you how I did that, so follow along. Project number 3, an old breadboard. It has a piece of laminate down here. I've already taken a sander to it. It was really gross, greasy, grimy, and I've taken a sander to it, and on both sides, it still needs some work. So I'm gonna show you if I keep this as a breadboard or if I turn it into decor. You'll have to watch and see what I do with it. Project number 4, just a plain old brown tray that's in really good shape. When I seen this at the thrift store, I was like, that's in really good shape, except it had a piece of, you know, that foamy stuff that you put in your cupboards and so that things don't slide around. There was a piece of that in there. So it was it's really kind of dirty down there on the bottom, but I got rid of that, and we're gonna make this cute again. One more item that doesn't have to be painted is this glass jar. It has a lid on it that is glass on the lid, which I thought was pretty cool. So it's not a vase because you'd have to take the lid off in order for it to be a vase, but it has some texture to it, and it is square. It has a marking on the bottom, but I cannot read it. I'll show you how I staged that later. Project number 5, this tote. It has 4 slots. It has snowflakes all around it. We're gonna get rid of those snowflakes. We're gonna get rid of this curly ribbon. And this tote is going to be cute again, and it's going to be able to be in your decor all year round, not just snowflakes. And then also it had some candlesticks in it that were painted white. These are kind of cute. I might use them in some home decor look and paint them up, get them all fresh looking, and show you how I stage them in my house. If you want to see all 5 of these projects, follow along. I'll show you what I do with them, and at the end, I'll show you how they look. First thing we're going to do to this breadboard is I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper and I'm going to get in this crease right here where all the gunky food might hang up. When I used my electrical sander, I probably didn't get in there very well, so we're going to go ahead and just sand with some hand sandpaper. I'm taking some Clorox bleach wipes and bleaching the face of this cutting board. I got all the grime out of there, and it's still got some grime to it. So you want to keep cleaning and bleaching until you don't have any of that grime left in there. I'm kind of make sure that I don't have any of that grime. That really bugs me. So if you do happen to buy this cutting board, let me tell you, it's going to be grime free, because I will scrub on this and sand it and scrub on it and sand it until there is no more grime. Or I'll make it into home decor.
Bleaching with a wipe wasn't working as well as I wanted it to, so I went in with the bottle of bleach outside so I could have some air. I put that over the entire cutting board and just let it sit in the sun. Once I started, I was determined to get this thing clean, so I took a razor blade and I scraped the wood, getting all of that top grime off of there. I'm sure I'm shaving the wood, but it's still really clean. I have this, I believe it's Sweet Pickins milk paint. It's the hemp oil, 100% natural. This is what I like to use for cutting boards. I've had it a really long time. It's 100% natural. I don't have much left. But you put it on. And it seals your cutting boards so that you can use them again. I don't like to waste this stuff, so I make sure I get it all in. It soaks right into the wood. I'm even going to put it on this piece of laminate. It's good for your hands. We're going to put it on the sides, and then you just let it soak in. And it's beautiful. We made this old cutting board look new again with no germs. I've scraped this thing so hard. I have to be down at least 3 layers on this wood.
The candlestick projects, I really did like them in black, but I'd like them to have a little bit more texture. So I went with the old school mixed with the DIY paint frosting, and I'm going to put that on the entire candlestick, not giving it a whole lot of texture, but some texture. When you mix the paint frosting in with the DIY paint, it makes the paint a little bit thicker and it looks like frosting, which can give you a nice texture, and they're not quite so plain anymore. The candlesticks have all dried. They have the letterpress gray with the paint frosting on them. They have a little bit of texture to them, which we're gonna take into our advantage. And I have beadboard, and I'm going to dry brush them. So I'm gonna wipe a little bit off on my cardboard and then go in and just lightly hitting the candlestick, accenting all those textures that we just made. We're going to clear wax these candlesticks. And that will seal the paint right into them. I wanted to add some color to these to make them look like they had been tarnished. So I took the shipwreck wax and I put a little bit onto a piece of just a paper plate. Then I took the Plant Lady making powder and I sprinkled a little bit of the green making powder into the shipwreck wax. And I mixed it up to get more of a green tarnished look versus the blue. Now I'm taking my brush into the green wax and adding it to the candlestick. You can do this with any color making powder. If you want the clear wax to be tinted in a orange, you can do that with the clear wax and add the orange you glad making powder to it and you'll have orange wax. Coat the entire piece and then rub it off. And you'll have a green tarnished look versus the white. We have this tray and I cleaned the bottom side of it. It had that yucky old shelf lining in it and the bottom is very textured. You can feel all the texture in that wood. I don't want that look on the bottom. So we're gonna use the DIY paint frosting again with aviary. I have a plate. It's got some beadboard on it. That really doesn't bother me. It's going to reactivate with the paint that when I put on it because it reactivates with water. And I'm gonna pour what I think I'm going to use onto the plate. I'm taking the paint frosting and I'm adding just a tiny bit, right like that. And it's gonna thicken that paint up. I'm gonna let it sit for a bit and then we're gonna come back and we're going to add some of this thicker paint to the bottom of this tray. Our paint is definitely thick and goopy. You could let it even get thicker, but we're gonna go ahead and use it like this. So the thicker paint is going to give us a texture so we don't have that grain texture. So my brush is going every which way, making some nice texture in the bottom of this tray that I'd like it to be just a little bit more farmhouse, modernized, not have that grain in there. Looks like I just mixed up enough. If you wanted to go a little bit thinner on here, you definitely could. You could make the paint go a little bit further than what I did. And then also, you can go ahead and stipple, making a lot more texture on the bottom of your tray. The aviary is all dried and it looks like it used another coat, but we're gonna go in with some color. I have some textured wallpaper. I sell this on my website and it's just in a sample sheet like this.
You can use it thousands of times. And what I did is I just laid it down in here and I put a big crease right here, picked it back up, made that crease, laid it down again, and made creases for the whole bottom of this tray. So I don't have to cut it. I can just use the creases. When I'm all done, I can undo the creases and I still have my largest sheet of textured wallpaper. It has other colors on it. I'm perfectly fine with that. It is the pattern called Connie, and it's one of my favorites, which is why it's called Connie. So we're gonna use a little bit of marquee red. We're gonna use blue iris. So we're gonna use blue iris here, some marquee red over here, wanting to get a little purple look. All we want is just a background. That's what we want on this tray for right now, is just a pretty background, using them blue and yellow, or sorry, blue and red, and making a nice purple. You don't want this to dry before you get your textured wallpaper into the tray. Then take your brayer and push it down. This is the IOD Brayer, and it works really good for making sure that it's pressed down, even better than your hands. I found that out. Like, I was thinking, I don't need to use that, but it really does make a difference. After you get it all smoothed down, we're gonna peel it up. And we have a texture on the bottom of that tray. Even some of the old 57 from this wallpaper came off in that tray, which I really like that. A little bit of the yellow, even better. I wasn't going to paint this whole thing over again, but I decided that I liked it with the darker sides. So I'm just going in with the blue iris and the marquee and making it that plummy purple, reddish purple. It's really pretty. I don't mind this at all. So I'm just blending those colors, going over pretty quickly. When we distress, we're gonna distress back to that green color, which is gonna make that come back through again, and we'll see it peek on through. I wanted to bring out the design from that textured wallpaper a little bit more. So I had an idea. I'm going to use my IOD Ink. This is mixing white, which is, you can mix it with other colors or you can use it by itself. I'm going to just take this pad and rub it over my painted surface. I'm picking up some of those high spots and accenting that just a little bit more. I'm barely touching it, which is also giving it a nice aged look in there as well. This is an experiment. We're gonna use a blue. This is China Blue ink. And since we have blue right here, we're gonna go with some blue on here as well. Oh yeah, just dragging that nicely. It's adding a little bit of color to it. And just in some random spots, you don't have to do the whole thing, just some random areas. That gives it a nice, I really like that China Blue one. That gives it some nice color down there and accents that pattern just a little bit more. This is kind of fall colors. It's getting to be fall. We're gonna put a sunflower stamp on there. This is my IOD envelope, and all of my sunflower stamps are perfectly contained inside this envelope. They're listed on my website if you're interested. So I don't want to do this large sunflower on here. I want to have a little bit more detail in it. So I do like this half a sunflower here. So we're gonna peel that one off and lay him there. This is another full sunflower. We're gonna take this one off as well and try and design it, this tray, using these two sunflowers. So I'm gonna let you watch when I do this process. I'm going to use my mixing ink white, and I'll show you why in a little bit. I decided to not use the stems. We're just going to use the sunflower flowers and then some leaves. I use the mask for the sunflowers to make sure that this one pops to the front along with this one, and this one is laying in the background. We're gonna go ahead and paint our centers first. And this one, I have to go ahead and do it a little differently. So the reason we're using the white is so that the black doesn't show up so much, and you can still follow along with the flowers lines. So I just went ahead and did the little petal area on that one. Then I'm gonna take my brush, and this is a flat brush, and I'm gonna put half in my yellow and half in my brown. And then I'm gonna pounce. To make that center. Then I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna put half in my orange and half in my brown. And then I take it and I drag it like this. I need a little more brown. I drag it like that. So my brush is half and half. And then I'm gonna go ahead, keeping the orange on the top, I'm gonna go ahead and pounce on this full circle. And then I'm gonna pounce again. And then I'm gonna go in with just some dark brown, filling that bottom. Got a little bit of depth that way. This one's going to be a kind of a yellowy orange. Same thing, pouncing. Right where that circle is. I like the little bit of orange, so we're gonna go in here and add some orange to this one. You don't have to be too careful because we're gonna go over top of those centers with the leaf color. Now we're gonna let that dry a little bit while we go ahead and paint our leaves. I'm gonna use another flat brush, and I'm gonna use some aviary.
And I see my leaf pattern right here. They did it all for me. Those stamps did it all for me. Anyone can be an artist. Just follow the lines. It's like a coloring book. You can make it more artistic, or you can actually really follow the lines. We're gonna add a little bit of yellow queen bee to that leaf. Giving it a nice warm green color. A little bit more aviary. Blending those colors in and making that nice green, yellowy green leaf pattern. That leaf is down on the bottom here, so we're gonna add just a little bit of our brown into the leaf because it'd be in the shadows area, so it's gonna be a little bit darker down there. And then also you can add a little bit of highlight to the top just by going in with beadboard. There's your first leaf. Has a lot of depth to it. We're gonna do the other ones. We're gonna take a couple small filbert brushes and we're going to go in with Queen Bee. Close that lid. Fire starter, beadboard, some making powders. These are always really good when it comes to doing a sunflower. They add some brightness. And then we're also gonna use some Bohemian Bright, which is spirited, is going to give it a really, really pretty yellow look to it. So first we have two brushes. We're gonna use the smaller one first. We're gonna make some of those back petals a little bit darker yellow. We're gonna head in with the queen bee and very artistically just laying the paint down. Some of those petals back there, they just need paint on them. It's okay if you go out of the lines. It really is not a big deal. You're just gonna find what petals you want to do in the darker color. That's what we're gonna do for right now for those back petals. Now we're gonna go ahead and take some of this brighter yellow and head in and do the other petals. You can overlap on top of them if you like. You filled in your sunflower. Now we're gonna head into the beadboard and just make a few highlights on some of these petals that are in the foreground, and so the light would be hitting them. That's gonna brighten the petals up a whole lot. You don't have to be an artist to make these sunflowers. Then we're gonna go ahead and go into a little bit of orange. I like my sunflowers to have a touch of orange to them because that's what they look like when they're growing out in the garden. So we're just going in on some of these back ones and adding a little touch of orange to them to give them a little bit more depth.
We're gonna head into this brown again and do a little bit more pouncing just to cover up some of those leaves that we left. And it also gives this like a seed look to it. That center is made up of all kinds of seeds. We need to leave that one dry. I'm gonna let you watch me in time-lapse motion to do the other ones. We're gonna use some making powders on here. There's Van Gogh, which is a mustardy orange, or sorry, mustardy yellow. And this is Bright Star, which is a bright yellow. We have Orange You Glad, and then we do have Plant Lady. So we're gonna start out with some Van Gogh. This is a powder, and it's highly pigmented, and you don't need much of it. So Debbie Beard from DIY Paint has found a really, really good way to use the making powder. Is you just need water, plain water, and we're gonna use a round paintbrush. You're gonna dip in the water and then dip in the making powder. This is dry. This is totally dry. And then we're just gonna go ahead and paint on the making powder. And it adds a really bright look to it. More water, more making powder. You can stop anywhere you want on this project. You do not have to keep adding these layers. I like to add layers and more layers and more layers. When my brush gets nice and dry, I can go ahead and go on to some of these other ones, and I'm only hitting the top of them, which is another cool look. Right here, this one went behind, this sunflower is on top. So how we can fix that, because I did this one first and then that one, is just go with this making powder and go right over the top, defining those petals just a little bit more on top of that purple one. Really making it look like it is in the front. That helps to pop that one. This one's a little on the lighter side, so we're gonna use Bright Star.
It really brightened those up. That making powder is amazing. Now we're gonna add a little of the date night to this one. It has a purple look to it, but it also has some pink in it where I think that red is going to be really pretty. It might be a little much, so we're gonna drag some of it off. You can do that by taking a baby wipe and just blotting. Being careful because it will smear. So don't smear the rest of your painting or you'll ruin it at this point. That red is a little on the bright side, so we're lightening this down, making it throughout the whole sunflower. Adding some of that fun red in there. Isn't that cool? We do have Plant Lady, which would be a nice green color, and that brighten up those leaves a little bit. So I'm gonna go in with another round brush, using some water, and dip right into the green. I got a little much. We added some brightness to them. One more product I'm going to use, it's called Bohemian Bright. This is spirited and it's very, very bright, and it also has like a translucent look to it. So you go over the top and you're not going to see much of it, but all of a sudden it's going to like really make your painting stand out. So when you go over it, you're not really covering up all of your colors. You're still seeing the orange popping through, but you're brightening up that yellow that's underneath. Once you use the spirited, you're gonna wonder why you didn't have it before. I like that one, but I'm gonna add a little spirited to it as well. You can either leave it like this, or you can stamp on the top of it. All right, now to finish these, we're gonna go back to these stamps that we had used already. They have white ink on them. It's thoroughly dried. I have no worries using a different color ink on these stamps. If you are worried about it, you can go ahead and wash these off with your Dawn dish soap. I let them soak, and then I just scrub them with a toothbrush with the Dawn dishwashing liquid. I didn't scrub these. Let them thoroughly dry before you go and do this side of the project. So the first sunflower that I have that's totally in the foreground is this one. And then this one is totally in the foreground. What you want to do is you want to get them done first. So we're going to go ahead and use Stone Gray. This is the IOD Stone Gray ink, and you just go ahead and you put some ink onto your stamp. You don't have to do that every time. Just when your stamp is getting dry and you want a nice fresh look, go ahead and re-ink it. It lasts a really, really long time. I'm using Stone Gray because I want this to not be quite black as black. And then this is the hard part. You're gonna go in here and line this bad boy up as best you can. Making sure your stamp is down everywhere, not to move it or shake it or smear it, and pick it up. Now, that sunflower that we just painted has all the IOD stamp lines to it, and it brings out the character just a little bit more. See how we went outside the lines? It's perfectly fine. It does not bother me one bit. I may have not put this in the correct location, but it's close enough. This stamp is a little bit more difficult. You're gonna wanna make sure that you find a reference point on this sunflower to put on your stamp. This one's really pointy, and I think right there, that's where my stamp goes on. Here's the really pointy petal, and you can see that it lines up just like that. We're gonna go ahead and pick it up, leaving it this way so we know where the top is, and we're gonna ink this stamp. This is why everyone can paint these sunflowers, because it really didn't matter if I stayed in the lines. Get that nice and inked up. Keeping this at the top, we're gonna line that up again. Dropping that right into place. Making sure not to smear it, wiggle it. You're gonna pull it right back off. There is a little bit of character in that sunflower.
You'll see me mess up here. I inked up my big sunflower and I put the mask on the big one, but I forgot to put it on the half sunflower. So when I went to put my stamp down, I stamped right over top of it. We'll fix it.
All right, confession time. I can't untake that away. I forgot to put the mask on here. Oh my goodness. So I have some lines from this sunflower going on top of this sunflower. I can't untake it away, so I'm gonna fix it for you. We're gonna go back in with our paint colors and cover some of that up. On these petals where the stamp went on top. This stamp went on top of that. I can't take that away, so I have to paint over the top of it. We have to fix it.
As I started to paint, I realized that when I would go ahead and put this stamp back on again, I was obviously not going to hit the exact same lines as the first one. So instead of just painting over this small little area of the sunflower, I had to go ahead and paint over the entire sunflower so that I could restamp it again and not have double lines, which in the long run, it was probably the better thing to do, because then I make sure that my sunflower colors match and it all is more clean and finished.
Okay, here we are again. This is all repainted. It's all dried again. This one is already stamped. This one is already stamped because we messed that up when we did this one. So now I'm going to make sure that I stamp this one, and when I do the leaves, we protect it. So we're gonna ink up this stamp one more time. I try to leave my mistakes in my videos so that you can learn from my mistakes. And then if you do those mistakes yourself, how to fix them. We're gonna go ahead and ink that up. This thin mount is a little big for this area, so I'm gonna remove it and freehand my stamp back on here. Making sure not to wiggle it, getting that image back down onto my board, and there you have it, back to re-inked. We protected this sunflower with the masking. We're gonna go ahead and lay this down. We'll ink it a couple more times. Then we're gonna do the big one. So we're moving our mask over to this stamp over here.
Them fry kids do not know how to shut lights off.
Were they on all day?
Well, the one above the sink was on. And the bathroom door was partially closed, and I'm like, man, it looks awful bright in the bathroom. Yeah, the bathroom light was on. Boo! Bedroom windows today when I came home.
I have to tone down this tray a little bit, so I'm going to use some DIY white wax. And this is already sealed with Big Top, So my white wax is not going to stick that terribly. It's just going to tone this down. Going over the entire thing with white wax. After the white wax is on, then you're going to go ahead with a dry cloth and wipe it back off. I knew that would bring out our wallpaper look on here and accent that highs and lows that we had in there. But I'd like my sunflowers to be a little bit brighter than this. So you can go in with your clear wax, put it on a cloth, a dry cloth, and it'll act as an eraser and brighten up some of that where you have, it'll still keep the white wax in some of those crevices, but it takes it off a little bit more on the top of the surface. This purple sunflower is really hidden in that white wax. We're gonna bring it out. Brightened it up just by adding clear wax. With the DIY wax, you let that sit for about 12 hours, 12 to 24 hours, and then you come back with another clean, dry cloth and buff it off to a perfect shine.
Painting these Tealight holders in a really dark brown. I wanted a dark base for what I was going to do with these. The reason we went with the dark chocolate on these is because we're going to make them copper. So we're using the DIY Pennies from Heaven. I wanted a dark base. The copper shows up so much better with a dark base, and it's the prettiest thing you're ever gonna see. A pretty fall decor. Here they are, copper. You can leave them like this, or we can make them even more fun with some shipwrecked wax. It's turquoise. You're gonna put it on with a brush. This is an old chippy brush that I use only for shipwrecked wax. Shiny new with shipwreck. Which do you prefer? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to paint the whole thing white. It already looks better. We have this birdhouse. I don't like this embossed wording on here. I need to cover that up. I thought about doing salt wash. I thought about doing a salt wash treatment, but I didn't know if that would cover it up. I'd really have to put it on thick. I thought about doing plaster of Paris, but then I remembered my textured wallpaper, and I had some that it's all painted already. So I wanted to see what the textured wallpaper would look like
if we put it on something and kept it there. So I took and I cut a piece of wallpaper, and then I laid it on, I made it into a cone, and I laid it on top of here, and then I put a big old crease, like I creased it. I already did this, so I can't do it again. I creased it with my fingers so I would know where to cut. So I cut the piece of wallpaper like this when I creased it with my fingers. So here we are using the pattern and the color to our advantage. And now this fits right on here. We have a little bit of overhang, but I'm really okay with that. And then I'm hoping that that's gonna cover it up. And we got a little bit of detail down here, kind of the same as up there. So we're gonna go ahead and put this on with some liquid patina. So DIY makes a liquid patina, which is a decoupage. It's like a clear coat glue-like substance. So we're gonna put some on here. I'm putting it on very liberal so that we make sure we have some good adhesion. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it on the wallpaper as well. We're gonna coat this wallpaper with this liquid patina also. Putting it towards me. We're gonna get it on there. I only did a little bit of the front of this. So that I could make sure that it got some good adhesion. We're gonna go back in and we're gonna get some more of it. And then this side. Making sure we seal it all up. And we got some good liquid patina to seal up that wallpaper. Here's the overlap. So I'm gonna go over top of this. I could have cut it off, but I really didn't mind the overlap. And a little bit more. Now you want to make sure that it's on your item nice and tight. No bubbles. And we're going to let that dry. While we wait for this to dry, we're going to go in. There's some aqua in here and some yellow. So we're gonna go in and we're gonna dry brush this bird house. So I'm getting some of that off and going in with this aqua color and adding a little bit of color to it. We're gonna add some of the yellow. This is a bright yellow. It's a DIY Oops color. They made a few Oops colors and the realtors, the DIY realtors got to purchase some of the Oops colors. And this was really a fun yellow. It's kind of a buttercup yellow, marigold yellow maybe would be a better word for it. Which is the color in this wallpaper. So here we have it. We're going to now distress some of that off of there so it won't look quite so blotchy. This has dried on here really nicely. We're going to go back in with the liquid patina and go right over top of the wallpaper to seal it in nicely.
onto the top of that birdhouse. That looks so much better than that wording, doesn't it? The birdhouse has dried. We're gonna put some clear wax on it. Just on this bottom for right now. The clear wax is gonna go on really well because it does have the liquid patina on it, which is a top coat. But we need the clear wax because we're gonna use dark dust. This is DIY's Dark and Decrepit Dust. It's in a powdered form. I'm gonna take a brush and I'm gonna add it over top of the clear wax. I can kind of control my dark areas with the Dark and Decrepit Dust more. I'm gonna go up inside here where it would be more shadowed up there, where it's got more texture. The Decrepit Dust, it just melts right into that clear wax. Then you'll take a cloth and wipe it off. It's a little bit more subtle than dark wax. We're gonna do the same thing to the textured wallpaper. We're gonna go on with clear wax. Then we're gonna go back in with the Decrepit Dust and just a dry paintbrush, artist paintbrush. We're gonna go around the edge and then filling in any of these areas on the textured wallpaper that we want that texture to stand out. You're working it into those areas. No crevice untouched. Dry paper towel. Wipe it back. Pretty amazing. Not Dark and Decrepit Dust. Dark and Decrepit Dust on textured wallpaper. Pretty sweet. If you want to try Dark and Decrepit Dust, you can find it on my website at thepaintedphotographer.com. Comes in a powdered form. Will last you forever. Dark and Decrepit Dust with clear wax. Wipe it back. A more subtle look than the dark wax. For this birdhouse, we're going to use this nice dark color to its advantage, and we're going to add some rust look to it. So I have Fire Starter. It's like Old 57. For the turquoisey part, let's use this. It's all clay. You don't want to waste a thing. We're going to put it on with our fingers. It even has some texture to it to make it look like real rust. making that look real weathered. While this paint is still wet, we're gonna go in with fire starter. It's not as chunky, but we're gonna finger paint it on, hitting some of those high spots that we made with that old 57 chunk. It's gonna look like rust, I promise. There's the top. It's looking really weathered. This one I'm not loving yet. We're gonna go back in with one solid coat of mermaid tail. Hitting most of it. Looking better. We're gonna let that dry. After this is all painted in mermaid tail, now I'm gonna go back with a baby wipe and distress back to some of that other color that was underneath. This is gonna give us a more aged look versus what we had before. So there's that orange and some of the old 57 just peeking through. I like this much better. And it's still a fun technique. It's got more solid surface, a more solid color, which is more pleasing to my eye. All of that thick paint, so it's given this roof a nice texture. And we're distressed some of that mermaid tail off of there, bringing out some of the old 57 color and the orange. Much better. Clear waxing this. I'm going to use the dark dust just to give this a little age and smear that dark dust right up into the top of that birdhouse where it would be the most darkened, and then also on the crease at the bottom. The dark dust melts right into the clear wax, making it very easy to use. It's going to look especially nice on the roof, giving it a rust look. We're going to try the orange You Glad making powder with the wax. I'm dipping a little bit on my brush, and I want this to look like rust. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some of that making powder right into that clear wax and giving it a little color. You don't need much. We now added a little rust look versus that. We'll do the other side. A little clear wax just to make sure it melts into something. Take your brush, dip it into your making powder, and dab it on your project and melt it right into that dark and decrepit dust and the clear wax. Rust is not always bright. There are some bright spots to it, but most of the time it's a little on the dirty side.
Here's the tote that had snowflakes on it. I sanded it. I really liked the gray look that it had, but I needed to sand off those sunflowers. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some Olden Gray from DIY. So what happened is when I sanded, I took some of that gray off of the original wood. So we're gonna try and put it back on. I'm gonna go ahead and dip into the Olden Gray, which is a liquid patina, and it grays the wood down. It's like a stain. It's called DIY Olden Gray, and it makes your wood look aged. And it sucks right into, especially where I sanded it. After the Olden Gray, that kind of acted as a sealer on this box, we're gonna add some white wax to give that gray just a bit more gray. So you just put the white wax on and wipe it off with a dry cloth. And it gives it more of a gray, whitewashed look. If it's too dark for you, you can go in with some clear wax, pulling some of that white back off and seeing that natural grain. We're gonna do this whole box.
Thanks for watching. I hope you like these projects that I did with you. If you would like to purchase any of the items that I made to use them or any of the thrifted items, you can head on over to thepaintedphotographer.com. And until next time, happy painting.